Penang has many chief ministers, but one towers over all the rest of them. I'm talking about Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu, which, if you are not old enough to know, is what we call the father of modern Penang. Every day, we travel down the expressway between Banla Pass and Georgetown, and we pass through a highway that bears his name. But who is Lim Chong Eu? For those of us who are fortunate to know about him, we would say that we owe him a gratitude, a debt of gratitude for having modernized Penang, for making Penang one of the most developed states in the country. Because without him, we might be just another state in Malaysia. But because of Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu, a person with the guts, with the boldness to take necessary risks, we are enjoying the fruits of all his effort. And I'm creating this video today with the hope that while it might not completely do justice to the contribution that Tun Dr. Lim has done for us, I hope that through this small effort, more people will know about him. And so let's go and learn about Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu, possibly the most illustrious Chief Minister of Penang. Prologue, Lim Chong Eu. Before we start, I just want to say that if you enjoy the videos I create, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so that I can bring more videos like this to you. And now let's start with a question. How does a young doctor from Penang rise to become the man who reshaped the destiny of an entire state? This is the story of Lim Chong Eu, a figure whose career spanned medicine, politics, and economic transformation, and whose legacy is written into the very skyline of modern Penang. Born in the shadow of colonial rule and educated in the halls of Edinburgh, Lim grew up at a time when Penang was a bustling free port, yet one soon to lose its shine. His life would parallel the journey of Malaya itself, through colonial days, the turmoil of independence, the challenges of nationhood, and the promise of modern development. Lim Chong Eu was not a conventional politician. He clashed with established parties, built new ones from the ground up, and stirred his cause through alliances and breakaways with steely resolve. Yet above all, he was a pragmatist. Where others saw Penang's decline, he saw opportunity. Where many doubted, he dared. Today, Penang's free trade zone, its electronics industry, and its role as Malaysia's Silicon Valley are living monuments to his vision. But to understand how this transformation began, we must step back in time to the roots of his story in Penang of the early 20th century. Let us begin with his family and childhood years and discover the foundations of the boy who would one day lead Penang into its modern age. Chapter 1: Family Background and Early Years. What kind of upbringing shapes a man who would later transform Penang? To answer this, we must look first to his father, Dr. Lim Chong Eu, a remarkable physician whose compassion left deep impressions on his son. Dr. Lim Chong Eu was born in Singapore in 1891 and proved himself a brilliant medical student at King Edward VII College of Medicine. In 1913, he graduated with honours, receiving the prestigious Lim Boon Keng Medal before moving to Penang to begin his practice. There, he established the Subeng Dispensary, strategically located near the bustling Prangin Market. Within its walls, he set up a people's clinic where he dispensed free medicine to the poor. At a time when healthcare was inaccessible to many, this generosity endeared him to ordinary Penangites and won him lasting respect. But Dr. Lim was not only a physician, he was also a community leader. He served as president of the Huyu Sia, a cultural and education association, and was active in the Straits Chinese British Association, which sought to represent the interests of the Straits-born Chinese to the colonial government. His example combined service, intellect, and civic responsibility, values that would deeply influence his son. Into this household of service and public-mindedness was born Lim Chong Eu on 28 May 1919. He was one of several children growing up in Georgetown amid the multicultural vibrancy of Penang's Straits community. From his father, he inherited a disciplined mind and a sense of duty. From the environment of Penang, a cosmopolitan outlook that would later serve him in politics and diplomacy. These formative years gave Chong Eu both the privilege of education and the awareness of social responsibility. He grew up not in isolation, but in daily contact with the realities of community life, a grounding that would later guide his political vision for Penang as a state where growth would serve the people. From this family foundation, young Chong Eu would step into the world of education, first in Penang and later abroad, where he honed the intellectual skills that would prepare him for a very different kind of calling. Chapter 2: Education and Medical Training Abroad. How does a young boy from Georgetown find his path to leadership? For Lim Chong Eu, the journey began with education, a pursuit his father, Dr. Lim Chui Leong, considered essential to serving society. Chong Eu's early schooling took place in Penang, where he excelled in his studies. The value his family placed on learning, combined with his own discipline, soon opened doors to higher education. Like many talented Straits Chinese youth of his time, he looked beyond Malaya for advanced training. In the late 1930s, he traveled to the United Kingdom to study medicine, followed in his father's footsteps. He enrolled at Edinburgh University in Scotland, where he trained as a physician. The timing, however, was extraordinary. Europe was on the brink of war. His years abroad exposed him not only to medical sciences, but also to the wider world of ideas, politics, and global conflict. Edinburgh's academic environment nurtured his analytical mind, while the turbulence of wartime Britain showed him the urgency of leadership and the interconnectedness of nations. In 1944, Lim Chong Eu graduated as a medical doctor. For a while, he served as a medical officer with the Malayan Air Force Auxiliary Wing, holding the rank of captain. But unlike his father, who had devoted himself to pediatrics and community medicine, Chong Eu's ambitions were already shifting. His education in Scotland broadened his horizons far beyond the clinic. He began to see medicine as one path to service, but not the only one. Politics, too, offered a way to improve lives on a much larger scale. By the time he returned to Malaya after the war, he was not only a doctor trained in Europe, but also a young man with a worldly perspective, ready to enter a country in transition. The Japanese occupation had shaken the old order, and the winds of independence were beginning to stir. It was into this unsettled Malaya that Lim Chong Eu returned, a doctor by training, but soon to be a politician in the making. His entry into public life would begin with his involvement in early post-war politics. Chapter 3: Entry into Politics and the Malayan Union Debate. What would compel a newly minted doctor trained abroad to step away from medicine and into the turbulent arena of politics? For Lim Chong Eu, the answer lay in the historical moment he came home to. The year was 1945. Malaya had just emerged from the Japanese occupation, its people weary but hopeful for change. the British sought to reshape the administration with the Malayan Union, a scheme that promised citizenship rights across communities but also appeared to weaken the sovereignty of the Malay rulers. The proposal ignited fierce opposition, especially among the Malay elite, who feared the erosion of traditional authority. Lim Chong Eu, back from Edinburgh and deeply conscious of both Asian identity and modern governance, could not remain on the sidelines. He threw himself into the debates, becoming a young voice in the generation determined to shape Malaya's future. Unlike many of his peers who were swept into communal politics, Chong Eu argued for broader inclusion, envisioning a polity where all communities, Malays, Chinese, Indians, and others, could coexist under a common national framework. His early forays into public speaking reveal his clarity of thought and boldness. At forums and meetings, he articulated the concerns of the Chinese community while also acknowledging the sensitivities of the Malays. He earned a reputation as a moderate, someone who believed that compromise and cooperation were the only paths forward. These qualities would define his political style throughout his career. By engaging in the Malayan Union debate, Lim Chong Eu transitioned from physician to politician. He was no longer merely the son of a respected doctor or a young professional returning from Britain. He was becoming a public figure willing to question colonial policies and chart alternative futures for Malaya. But to carry his ideas further, Chong Eu needed a platform larger than community forums. That opportunity would come with his involvement in the Malayan Chinese Association, where he quickly rose to prominence. Chapter 4: Returning to Penang, a New Beginning. What makes a man return to where it all began? For Lim Chong Eu, the answer was both personal and political. After years of national politics and after weathering the storms of ideological battles, he returned to his home state of Penang in the 1960s. It was here that he would find the stage upon which his greatest legacy would be built. In 1969, Lim led the newly formed Gerakan Rakyat Malaysia, a multi-ethnic party, to a stunning victory in Penang. The results shocked the political establishment. Gerakan swept to power in the state, toppling the long-standing rule of the Alliance Coalition. Lim was sworn in as the Chief Minister of Penang, a position that would define the next 3 decades of his life. The early years of his administration were marked by boldness. Lim was not afraid to take risks, and he had a vision for Penang that few could yet see. He believed Penang's survival depended not on its port alone, but on transforming the state into a hub of manufacturing, technology, and education. His political comeback was also a personal triumph, a chance to reshape his birthplace into something greater. But power came with challenges. The early 1970s were turbulent years in Malaysia, with political upheavals and ethnic tensions threatening stability nationwide. Lim had to walk a fine line between asserting Penang's interests and aligning with federal priorities. Yet, it was during this period that he began to sow the seeds of Penang's future as an industrial powerhouse. From the corridors of Komtar to the streets of Georgetown, the people of Penang were beginning to sense change. But would Lim's gamble pay off? Or would Penang's old trading identity prove too entrenched? In the next chapter, we will see how Lim Chong Eu's bold industrialization drive reshaped Penang's identity, bringing foreign investors to its shores and transforming it into Malaysia's Silicon Valley. Chapter 5: Architect of Industrialization. How does a small island, long reliant on free trade and port activity, reinvent itself as an industrial hub? This was the challenge confronting Penang in the late 1960s, and it was here that Lim Chong Eu's vision and character came to the fore. By this time, Penang had been dealt a blow when the free port status was revoked in 1969, causing widespread unemployment and uncertainty. Many feared that the island would sink into economic stagnation. But Lim, ever pragmatic and forward-looking, saw in crisis the seed of opportunity. He believed that Penang's survival depended on breaking away from its dependence on trade and embracing modern industry. Lim was not merely a politician, he was a strategist who combined intellectual discipline with boldness. He began sketching out a blueprint to attract multinational cooperation, an idea still novel for Malaysia at the time. Where others saw only obstacles, limited infrastructure, high cost, stiff competition, Lim saw possibilities. His persistence, attention to detail, and confidence in Penang's people enabled him to persuade global investors that the island could succeed. In 1972, his efforts bore fruit with the establishment of the Bayan Lepas Free Trade Zone. It was a masterstroke, an area carved out to welcome high-tech manufacturing firms with favorable conditions. Soon, American and European electronics giants set up factories, sparking a transformation that would earn Penang the title Silicon Island. Yet what stood out was not just his policy, but the way he carried himself through the process. Lim's calm demeanor, his ability to listen, and his knack for building trust with foreign investors gave him credibility on the global stage. At the same time, his humility and accessibility reassured Penangites that he was acting in their best interests. The Free Trade Zone was not merely an economic initiative, it was the embodiment of Lim's belief in resilience, adaptation, and the pursuit of excellence. It also set the stage for Penang's reinvention in the decades to come. As we move to the next chapter, we will explore how the seeds of industrialization flourished in a new era of prosperity, reshaping the island and the lives of its people. Chapter 6, The Eight Samurai. What happens when leadership, vision, and opportunity converge? In Penang during the 1970s, this convergence produced a remarkable phenomenon, the rise of the Eight Samurai. These were the pioneering local entrepreneurs who became the backbone of Penang's industrial revolution, and their journey cannot be told without acknowledging Lim Chong Eu's guiding hand. Lim understood that true progress could not rely solely on foreign corporations. To build resilience, Penang needed its own champions, local leaders who could stand shoulder to shoulder with international firms. His role was not to micromanage them, but to inspire, mentor, and open doors. He gave them the confidence that Penang's destiny lay in its own hands and that their efforts could reshape not just the economy, but the very identity of the island. The Eight Samurai, including notable figures such as Khoo Kay Peng, Khaw Teng Tong, and others, were risk-takers, innovators, and visionaries in their own right. But Lim's steady leadership created an environment where they could thrive. He fostered a climate of trust between the state government and business leaders, ensuring that bureaucracy did not stifle ambition. His ability to blend pragmatism with encouragement meant that these entrepreneurs felt both challenged and supported. It was not only about economics. Lim instilled in them a sense of purpose, that their work was part of something larger, the transformation of Penang into a modern industrialized society. He valued personal relationships, often meeting them face to face, listening attentively, and urging them to think beyond immediate profits to long-term development. In many ways, the Eight Samurai reflected Lim's own qualities: discipline, perseverance, and vision. They embodied the entrepreneurial spirit that he had cultivated, and together they laid the foundations for Penang's economic resilience in decades to come. As we transition into the next chapter, we will see how the success of these pioneers was not just confined to industry, but radiated outward, transforming Penang society and shaping a new identity for its people. Chapter 7: Social Transformation of Penang. What happens to a society when factories rise where fishing villages once stood? In the 1970s and 80s, Penang was living through this question in real time. Under Lim Chong Eu's leadership, the island experienced not just an economic transformation, but a profound social shift that touched nearly every family. Thousands of young women, many from rural households, found new opportunities as factory workers in the free trade zone. For the first time, daughters that might otherwise have remained in traditional domestic roles began earning their own wages, sending money home, and shaping the aspirations of their siblings. This influx of female workers marked a cultural turning point, giving rise to a new sense of independence and mobility. Lim understood the importance of education as the foundation for this transformation. He pushed for technical schools, vocational training, and stronger linkages between education and industry. His vision was simple yet profound: to prepare a generation of Penangites to step confidently into the industrial age, armed with the skills to succeed. The social fabric of Penang was also changing in more subtle ways. With the growth of new townships like Bayan Baru and the steady expansion of housing, people began to imagine different futures. Traditional trades, fishermen, small-scale artisans, market stallholders slowly gave way to factory technicians, clerks, and engineers. Penang was developing a middle class, and with it came new ambitions, from home ownership to higher education for children. Yet, Lim never lost sight of balance. He knew that change could not come at the expense of community. He emphasized the role of civic organizations, cultural associations, and local leadership in ensuring that modernization did not erase heritage. His ability to navigate between progress and tradition earned him both respect and trust. As we move into the next chapter, we will see that while Penang's transformation was inspiring, it also came with challenges, political pressures, national shifts, and new realities that would test even a leader as steadfast as Lim Chong Eu. Chapter 8: Political Challenges and Decline. How does a leader weather the storms of shifting politics when the tides begin to turn against him? By the late 1980s, Lim Chong Eu was no longer just the architect of Penang's economic revival. He was also a veteran navigating an increasingly complex and competitive political landscape. For years, Lim had balanced Penang's needs against the larger framework of Malaysian politics. His pragmatic, often understated style won him respect, but national politics was changing. The rise of new parties and a more assertive opposition meant that voters were no longer content to focus solely on economic growth. Social issues, identity politics, and generational change began to dominate public discourse. The 1990 general election would prove to be a watershed moment. Lim, by then in his 70s, faced a resurgent opposition led by Lim Kit-siang of the Democratic Action Party. After more than 2 decades in power, the Gerakan-led state government fell and Penang entered a new political chapter. It was a humbling defeat for a man who had once reshaped the island's identity. Yet, even in decline, Lim's character stood out. He did not cling bitterly to office or lash out at those who replaced him. Instead, he stepped aside with dignity, acknowledging the people's choice. His humility in defeat mirrored his pragmatism in leadership, reinforcing the impression of a man who saw politics not as a personal possession but as public service. The fall from power also highlighted the paradox of Lim's career. He had given Penang the tools to modernize, but modernization itself brought forth new expectations, new voters, and new voices. His vision of progress had succeeded so well that the society it created began demanding more than economic opportunity. It wanted new forms of representation. In the following chapter, we will explore how Lim Chong Eu lived out his post-political years and how history came to view him not just as a politician who lost power, but as a statesman who had already left an indelible mark on Penang's story. Chapter 9: Retirement and Reflection. What becomes of a leader once the political stage falls silent? For Lim Chong Eu, retirement did not mean obscurity. It became a quieter chapter of influence and reflection. After the 1990 defeat, he stepped back from active politics, but Penangites continued to recognize him as the man who had laid the foundation for the island's transformation. In his retirement, Lim returned to the private life he had long balanced with politics. He devoted time to his family and to pursuits away from the public eye, yet he remained a respected elder statesman. When approached by journalists or historians, he spoke not of bitterness, but with a calm perspective on both his achievements and shortcomings. His humility stood out. He never overstated his role, yet neither did he shy away from acknowledging the changes he had brought about. He also witnessed firsthand the fruits of his vision. The Penang Free Trade Zone, the electronics factories, and the growing prominence of Bayan Lepas all continued to flourish. As the island modernized, many began to look back on his tenure with renewed appreciation. While some criticized his political decisions, others pointed to the undeniable fact that without his foresight, Penang might not have achieved the economic standing it enjoyed in the late 20th century. Throughout this period, Lim maintained his signature trait of modesty and pragmatism. He did not attempt a political comeback, nor did he seek to undermine his successors. Instead, he embodied the grace of a leader who knew when to let the next generation step forward. To the younger politicians who occasionally sought his advice, he offered quiet counsel, drawing on a lifetime of experience but never insisting on the last word. In the next chapter, we will see how Penang and Malaysia as a whole began to honor Lim Chong Eu in his later years, cementing his reputation not only as a politician but as a statesman who left behind a legacy larger than electoral politics. Chapter 10: Honors and Tributes. How does a nation recognize a man who helped reshape its destiny? For Lim Chong Eu, the years after retirement brought not only reflection, but also a wave of honors and tributes that acknowledged his immense contributions. In 1990, he was conferred the title of Tun, Malaysia's highest civilian honor, marking him as one of the country's most distinguished leaders. He had already received the Tan Sri title earlier in his career, but the Tunship cemented his place in the nation's memory alongside its foremost statesmen. His name became inseparable from Penang's development story. Locally, tributes poured in. Universities and chambers of commerce frequently invited him as guests of honor, recognizing his role in nurturing Penang's economy. For Penangites, he was no longer just the former chief minister, he was the father of the modern state. Roads, buildings, and institutions would later bear his name, ensuring that generations to come would encounter his legacy not just in books, but in the daily fabric of life. The greatest tribute, however, came in 2010. After his passing, the Penang state government announced the renaming of the coastal highway stretching from Georgetown to Bayan Lepas to Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu Expressway. It was a symbolic gesture. The very road leading to the free trade zone he envisioned now carried his name, a living memorial for commuters and businesses alike. Tributes were not confined to Penang. Leaders across Malaysia acknowledged his unique role in shaping both national politics and regional development. Former colleagues, even former rivals, described him as a man of vision and principle. The nation's newspapers filled with editorials that remembered his foresight, his modesty, and his statesmanship. As we move to the next chapter, we will reflect on his passing in 2010 and how Malaysians mourn the departure of a leader who had given so much of himself to both Penang and the nation. Chapter 11: Passing and National Mourning. What happens when a towering figure leaves the stage of history? On 24th November 2010, Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu passed away in Penang at the age of 91. His death marked the end of an era for the state and the nation. Though he has stepped back from active politics 2 decades earlier, his presence remains deeply felt. He was, to many, the living embodiment of Penang's modern identity. The news of his passing sent ripples across Malaysia. In Penang, flags were flown at half-mast and the state declared a period of mourning. Thousands came to pay their respect. At the Dewan Sri Penang building, where his body lay in state, people from all walks of life, businessmen, workers, students, and ordinary citizens lined up to offer prayers and condolences. It was a vivid reminder that Lim Chong Eu's legacy had touched not just elites, but everyday Penangites whose lives had been reshaped by the industries and opportunities he helped create. Leaders across the political spectrum, including those who had once been his rivals, offered heartfelt tributes. Prime Minister Najib Razak hailed him as a statesman who laid the foundation for Penang's economic success. Others remembered him as a bridge between the old and new Malaysia, a man who fought for Chinese community rights in his youth, yet later transcended communal lines to focus on national development. His funeral was conducted with full state honours. The cortege passed through Georgetown's historic streets before proceeding to the Batu Gantung's crematorium, with thousands lining the route in silent tribute. Newspapers carried black and white portraits of him, dignified and serene, alongside editorials that praised his vision and humility. The mourning was not only about the loss of a leader, but also about the passing of a generation. With Lim Chong Eu's departure, Malaysians reflected on the values of dedication, discipline, and foresight that he embodied. His death underscored how rare such figures are and how much his leadership continued to mean even decades after he left office. As we move to our final chapter, we will reflect on his enduring legacy and how Penang and Malaysia continue to feel his influence to this day. Chapter 12: Enduring Legacy. What remains when the applause fades and the years move on? For Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu, his legacy is carved not in monuments but in the living fabric of Penang. The free trade zones he established in Bayan Lepas continue to power the state's economy, anchoring Penang as Malaysia's Silicon Valley. Every microchip exported, every factory expansion carries an echo of his foresight. Beyond industrial growth, Lim Chong Eu's legacy lives in the cityscape of Penang. Roads, schools, the public spaces bear his name, but more importantly, his influence is woven into the everyday lives of Penangites. Families who prospered because of jobs in electronics, students who gained opportunity through better education, and entrepreneurs who built on his vision all are silent testaments of his enduring impact. Yet his legacy is not only material. He demonstrated that leadership required both strength and humility, vision and pragmatism. He had the courage to challenge colonial structures in his youth, the resilience to face political defeat, and the foresight to reinvent Penang's destiny. His story shows that true leadership means adapting to change while holding firm to principles of service. For historians, Lim Chong Eu represents a rare blend of doctor, politicians, and nation builder. For ordinary Penangites, he remains our Chief Minister, the man who transformed a struggling island into a hub of global significance. For Malaysia as a whole, he is remembered as a statesman who transcended ethnic and partisan divides, a reminder of what is possible when leadership rises above narrow interests. As the years pass, his contributions continue to inspire. Whenever Penang debates its future, whether in technology, governance, or community, the question lingers: what would Lim Chong Eu have done? That question alone shows the measure of his influence. From the humble streets near Prangin Market, where his father once dispensed medicine, to the global factories humming across Bayan Lepas, Lim Chong Eu's legacy stretches across time and space. He proved that one man's vision could alter the destiny of an entire state. And with that, we arrive at the end of his life story. But as we will see in the epilogue, the story of Lim Chong Eu is not just about history, it is about how the present continues to carry his imprint and how the future may still walk in his shadow. Epilogue. As the curtain falls on this story, we return to a simple truth. History is not just about events, but about people. Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu was such a person, complex, visionary, sometimes controversial, yet always dedicated to the cause of progress. He stood at the crossroad of Malaysia's independence, Malaysia's early nationhood, and Penang's transformation into a global hub. Few leaders managed to leave their imprint so deeply across all stages. His journey reminds us of the power of vision. From the classrooms of Edinburgh to the council chambers of Penang, he never ceased to think about the future. He believed in education, in economic reinvention, and in building bridges between communities. He knew that leadership was never about clinging to power, but about service to people and responsibility to history. Even in retirement, Lim Chong Eu remained a figure of quiet dignity. He did not seek applause or monuments. His true monument lies in the thriving Penang we see today, its industries, its people, and its reputation as one of Southeast Asia's most dynamic states. The skyline of Georgetown, the bustle of Bayan Lepas, and the opportunities enjoyed by new generations all bear his invisible signature. Yet perhaps the greatest lesson of his life is humility. Despite his towering stature, he lived without ostentation, remembered as approachable and thoughtful. To his fellow Penangites, he was not just a chief minister, but a neighbor, a friend, and a mentor. As we step away from his story, we are left with more than memory. We are left with inspiration. Inspiration to lead with integrity, to think beyond the present, and to serve with humility. In this way, the life of Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu continues to guide Penang and Malaysia. His story ends, but his legacy endures. And for that, we remember him not just as a statesman, but as a man who helped Penang dream and dare to become what it is today. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this video on the life and legacy of Tun Dr. Lim Chong Eu. If you enjoyed this journey through Penang's history, please give this video a like and share it with your friends, family, and anyone who would appreciate learning about Malaysia's past. And don't forget to subscribe to the Learn Penang Hokkien YouTube channel for more videos like this, stories of the people, places, and events that shape our region. Until we meet again in the next video, 感謝你姐姐。